It's the Mesozoic Era, an age like no other where strange beasts roam across the planet, filling every environment, from towering mountain peaks to tropical rainforests and vast deserts. There are creatures so weird they would make Lovecraft blush, and others so bizarre they would put Picasso to shame. And yet, somehow in all this chaos, life finds a way to not only survive, but thrive. Today, we are going to talk about the Triassic. The Triassic was a period of time from about 252 million to 201 million years ago, and was the first period of the larger Mesozoic era. This era is often informally called the Age of Reptiles, because during this time, reptiles became the dominant terrestrial vertebrates. Now, of course, we know that dinosaurs were technically also reptiles. In fact, they belong to a group of reptiles known as archosaurs, which also includes crocodilians and their relatives, but also birds, which evolved from a group of theropod dinosaurs. The first dinosaurs would actually evolve during the Triassic, though it would be during the next two periods, the Jurassic and Cretaceous, when they would become the dominant land animals. But for now, we are going to focus on those non-avian reptiles, including some of the weirdest animals to ever live. Let's start by looking at the world these animals inhabited, because the Triassic was a world that looked very different from our own. During this time, Pangaea, the supercontinent, still existed, but the climate was rapidly changing. We can see evidence of this in the geological record in the form of ash deposits from massive volcanic eruptions, suggesting a dramatic shift away from the hot, wet climate of the Permian towards something drier and colder. The forests that dominated the late Permian began to break down and become replaced with more open, scrubby environments, much like what you might see in southern Africa today. However, it wasn't all dry and barren. Lush tropical rainforests still existed, especially near the equator, and they were home to some of the most bizarre creatures in all of history. One such animal was Rhineia, a relative of the crocodile that spent its time in the trees. It was around 7 meters long, with prehensile tail, and huge claws on each finger. This allowed it to grab branches with its hands and feet and swing through the trees with ease. Its head was long and narrow, with a pointed snout, and it had sharp teeth along its upper jaw, but not along its lower jaw. Instead, its lower jaw was smooth, suggesting that Rhineia used its mouth to grab prey like a pair of tweezers. Unlike modern crocodiles, it probably didn't have a hard shell on its belly, but instead had softer, flexible armor made of small plates and spines. Like all crocodilians, Rhineia was an ambush predator. It would spend hours camouflaged amongst the leaves before snatching unsuspecting prey. Some species even had excellent eyesight and could detect movement on the forest floor, allowing them to judge distances as they fell from tree to tree. If you ever find yourself in a Triassic rainforest, keep your eyes peeled for anything that looks like a crocodile with hands. But not all Triassic animals were as scaly and reptilian as Rhinocephalus. Some were shockingly furry. That's right, mammals were alive and well during the Triassic. But don't expect big, hairy beasts. All living mammals today are descended from a common ancestor that lived during the Triassic. But until that ancestor group appeared, mammals were mostly shrew-sized and insect-eating. One such shrew was Morganucodon, a small mammal with furry, dense hair all over its body. It had large, protruding incisors in the front of its mouth, and smaller teeth towards the back for crushing. Insects must have been a tasty treat for this little beast. Perhaps it spent its days darting between branches and its nights snuffling around for insects on the forest floor. Shrews aren't the most exciting animals, but without them, we would never have gotten furry monsters like Bigfoot or the Yeti. So we owe them at least a little bit of gratitude. The Triassic saw the appearance of some of the first giant reptiles too. But unlike today's mammals, these giants got really big really fast. Take, for instance, the terrible name, Pleiosaurus. Yeah, that's not actually what it sounds like. This Triassic meat eater was up to 11 meters long and weighed around 1,000 kilograms. It had a long, low skull with conical teeth that were great for catching and crushing bone. But its powerful jaws weren't its only weapon. Plea also had extremely long and sharp claws on the ends of its fingers, which it used to slash at its prey. Unlike most carnivores, Plea probably didn't chase down its food. Instead, it ambushed unsuspecting victims with lightning-fast strikes. What exactly this Triassic terror ate is unknown. It likely went after large animals, but it may have even gone after smaller prey. Not to be outdone, there were equally terrifying plant eaters during the Triassic, like the herbivorous Dilophosaurus. No, not that one. That's from Jurassic Park. This Dilophosaurus was over 9 meters long and weighed about 3,000 kilograms. Like many other plant-eating dinosaurs, it had a thick, bony armor covering its body, except that this armor took the form of huge plates that ran from its shoulders to the end of its tail. Between these plates were spikes pointing backwards, which would have made it very difficult for predators to get at the delicious meat underneath. With protection like that, Dilophosaurus could spend its days chomping on plants while looking like a moving castle. These diverse animals all lived until around 201 million years ago, when something terrible happened, something that would change the planet forever. We know this because of the KPG band, a thin layer of sediment that contains an unusually high concentration of iridium. Iridium is an element that is rare on Earth, but fairly common in space. It's believed that the iridium arrived on Earth via an asteroid impact, one that killed off the dinosaurs and opened the door for mammals to take over. But the impact wasn't quite that dramatic in the Triassic. Instead of wiping out all life, it seems to have affected each group differently. For instance, the therapsids, a group that includes mammals, were almost completely wiped out. Meanwhile, the archosaurs seem to have suffered only minor losses. As far as we can tell, this ecological disaster was the worst for those animals that lived only in water or only on land. Animals that could live both on land and in water seem to have fared the best. This would make sense because animals that lived only in one environment would have been affected more severely by any changes to that environment, whether caused by an asteroid impact or anything else. So what caused this mass extinction? Scientists generally agree that it was the result of massive volcanic eruptions in what is today southern Africa. These eruptions released tons of gases into the atmosphere, including carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and water vapor. Carbon dioxide would have warmed the planet, leading to higher sea levels and less snow and ice at the poles. Sulfur dioxide would have reflected sunlight away from the Earth, causing global cooling. Water vapor would have trapped heat in the lower atmosphere and possibly led to global warming. Depending on which scenario played out, animals would have faced drastically different climates than the ones they had evolved under, leading to mass extinctions. And while it's true that the asteroid impact didn't cause a mass extinction in the traditional sense, it did cause one in the literal sense. It marked the end of the Triassic and the beginning of the Jurassic, ending an entire period in Earth's history. And it set the stage for the dinosaurs to take over the planet. So what do you think? Are you glad the Triassic came before the Jurassic? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for coming along on this journey through time. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please subscribe and leave a like. See you next time.